Hey there everyone, welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I'm the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So this is our Wednesday night favorites. So this week we're not doing a ranking or a top 10 or a top 25 or anything. I'm just doing something I've been thinking about doing for a while, but I was waiting on one particular album. I like to have all my props before I start. So anyways, we're going to do 10 essential progressive rock albums that I think everybody who's into progressive rock or is going to get into progressive rock should own. You know, just my own opinion. You may have a different album in each of these bands' collection that you think is more essential than that, and I have no problem with it. The point is that these are 10 bands, and that's the way I'm doing it. I'm not doing 2 or more albums from a band. This is just one album from each band of these 10 bands. But the point is that these are 10 bands that people should be aware of. And it was one band I left out, and I was going to include them, but I decided that even though this first band, and I've done this in an alphabetical order, so actually they're not the first band. I'll take that all back. Okay, so I chose to leave out one band who many people were going to be surprised that they're not on here. But they're not on here because I don't think any of their one particular album is essential, but they do have a lot. And then again, I may do a second 10 essential albums, and they will probably almost certainly be in that one. So we're talking about 10 essential albums from 10 progressive rock bands. And I've done it in alphabetical order, as I said. And so we'll start out with this one. Sorry, getting a bit of a glare here. I'm not seeming to get over that. Oh, there it is. This is Camel's Moon Madness. And before I go any further, just give me a second. That ought to make it easier. Okay, that should take the glare out. There we are. Well, maybe it's not gonna. You just never know, eh? Okay, so the album is Moon Madness by Camel. This is a good album. This is my first Camel album. Now, some people may put Mirage in there. That would be a choice that they could make easily, and wouldn't be out of place. Many people feel it's their best album. I certainly feel it's a very good album. This one here I've had longer, and I feel like it's a little bit more, to me it sounds more like Camel. That is a much more aggressive album. Doesn't really sound as much, and it does sound like Camel, but doesn't have as much of that Camel kind of softness that I've come to expect from Camel. Great album, but I just think that this one, if you're starting out, this is a much more easy listen. Much more easy to get into. It's a great cover, I think. It's got some fantastic tunes on here. Lots of great guitar from now I'm drawing a blank here. Andy, damn, I'm getting old as a bastard, you know. Yeah, sorry, Andy Latimer. I don't know why I drew such a blank on that. Does some great guitar on here. He's very good. This is the band with all of the original kind of guys on it. Pete Bardens is on here. Doug Ferguson, Andy Ward, all the guys you'd come to expect. And this is a great album. Many feel this is their best album. Some, like I said, feel that maybe Mirage is the best, or maybe Moon, or maybe Snow Goose. But I like this one. It has enough vocal music on it that I appreciate it. A lot of Camel's music has just instrumental. This has some instrumental as well. So it's kind of a mix of everything. Where, you know, some bands like Snow Goose doesn't sit with me as well because it's very kind of it's very instrumental. So if you're looking to get into prog music, entirely instrumental album is probably more like jazz fusion-y. So I just think that this is the perfect first Camel album. and probably as if should be one of your progressive rock albums. If you are trying to start out, that's an essential. So the next band up is a band that I wasn't going to include in this because I'm not a huge fan of them. I do like some of their stuff, and most of that stuff is on the album I'm going to show you, but I don't see how you can do a must, like do a must-own progressive rock albums and not include this band. I think it's impossible. So we're talking about Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I chose the debut album here because I love the song Lucky Man. I think this album lends itself a little bit easier to beginner Emerson, Lake and Palmer people than some of the other albums, which are a lot more progressive. But this is a good first Emerson, Lake and Palmer album, I think. And I'm going to stick with what I think because I can't think for anybody else, right? Okay, so the next one up, not necessarily, not my favorite of this group's albums, but definitely upper echelon for this group. It also has two absolutely classic songs, and we're talking about Genesis Foxtrot here. And of course, Watchers of the Sky and Supper's Ready. Is there any more Genesis songs than those ones? Supper's Ready may be one of the greatest prog epics of all time. Watchers of the Sky is amazing. You know, and you've got like Timetable and Get Out by Friday, and one of my personal favorites, Canned Utility and the Coastliners, and you have a little classical bit, Horizon, on here. So this is a good first Genesis album, I think, that own. I think it's in the top three, maybe four Genesis albums. For some people, this is their favorite, but I think it's the Genesis album that lends itself best for beginners who want to get into Genesis prog. It has a couple of already kind of well-known songs, so it gets them a start. There's a couple of other Genesis albums I prefer more than this one, but this one's a good start. The next one is not an easy listening, probably one of their harder listen to for this band, but it's an absolute have to have if you're going to start getting into progressive rock. This is the progressive rock by this album, by this band. Has a lot of really good stuff on it, but it's basically a hard listen to the first time through because it's only one song, and we're talking about Thick as a Brick. If you don't like that epic length stuff, if that's going to be too much for you to grasp early on, then my suggestion is maybe you may want to go with Aqualung or Minstrels in the Gallery. One of those two albums might be a better fit for you if you're starting out. But for me, I think this is an essential album to have for your progressive rock era. You will eventually have to have this. It's just so good. Okay. The next one up is another band that I have never really gotten into. I've tried, just for some reason they don't sit with me as well as a lot of other progressive bands. I'm not really sure what the issue is. To me, it seems like a no-brainer that I should like these guys a lot, but for some reason I'd never really have gotten into them. I do have a couple of their albums, and either one of them would be great as a first album, but I think this one is essential. I think if you're having a prog collection and you want to start and you want to get the 10 prog albums that to start your collection off, this has got to be one of them. Left Overture from Kansas. And you could go with Point of No Return. You wouldn't be wrong with that album either, but I think this is a better album overall, better sound. I think the songs are a little bit more memorable. Again, I'm not a Kansas fan, so there may be Kansas people out there watching saying, oh no man, you got to go with Point of No Return, or you got to go with this one or that one. You know, by all means, you know, read the comments and see what you think. I just think that for me, this was my first Kansas album, and I think if you're doing an essential prog album collection, this has to be on it. There's just no two ways about it. So there you go. So the next band up, another K band. I think you all know where we're going from here. Debut album from this band. Maybe the first prog album ever to come out, and it absolutely is an essential album to any prog collection that anyone's starting or has. And we're talking about In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. Just so memorable, so good. You know, a lot of people would know, having never heard anything, but they're going to know 21st Century Schizoid Man. Not one of my favorite tracks, and probably my least favorite track on the album, but definitely a memorable song. Everything on this album is fantastic. I just think that, especially if you're starting out with King Crimson, this is the place to start, right at the beginning. And this is one of the first, if not the first, progressive rock album ever. So for me, In the Court of the Crimson King has to be on this list. So the next, we got 4 left. And remember, I'm not doing this from least to best or my most favorite to my least favorite or any of that. This is just alphabetically. That's all we're doing here. I just put them in an alphabetical order, and I'm doing it that way. So the next one out is an album that put this band on the map for me. I've heard several other albums since. I've had a couple others I've been listening to, a couple that are in my wait on to get on the playlist. But however, nothing has grasped me as much as these. This band actually brought new progressive rock music, or not new, but music I hadn't listened to my attention. Before that, I was into certain bands, and I didn't go outside of that. And this was the first band that I did. And we're talking about Tab in the Ocean by Nectar. Look at that album cover. It's fantastic. You've got only 4 tracks on here, but they're all real catchy. This is actually a fairly heavy album too. Almost, I don't think of it as a progressive metal album, but it has a lot of that real heavy sound to it. Some of the songs, King of Twilight particularly, ended up on an Iron Maiden album as well. So it's a pretty heavy album, lots of heavy keyboards, guitars really good on this album. All 4 tracks are outstanding: A Tab in the Ocean, Desolation Valley and Waves, Crying in the Dark, and King of Twilight. That's the original mix. And then on the US mix, you've got the same, but just a little bit different sounding to each of the songs. Not a ton different, but a little bit. And really, really, really good album. And then you got some bonus tracks on here, which are live tracks of the same songs. So I must have album for a progressive rock collection. If you're new, this is an album I highly recommend from this group. Some people may go with Recycled as being easier to get into, and I wouldn't argue that point. I think they probably are right. I just think this is a better album, and this won't be hard to get into. Maybe the first couple of tracks, A Tab in the Ocean and Desolation Valley, that are a little bit longer, might take you a little bit longer to get into, but you're going to like this if you like progressive, especially if you like it heavier, which I do. Okay, so these last 3 I think are pretty much no-brainers, really. This one's definitely a no-brainer. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. No bad songs on this album. This is a progressive masterpiece with a lot of psychedelic feel to it, or spacey feel to it. Maybe spacey feel, probably a better way. But a must-have progressive rock album if you're going to get into progressive rock in any kind of way. This is an album you got to listen to. Now, I've had people tell me this is not a progressive rock album. Some people have split hairs, but I don't see what else this would be. Some would say it's a space rock album. I don't know what you want to call it. To me, it's a progressive rock album, and not only is it a progressive rock album, it's one of the best progressive rock albums. Maybe one of the best, if not the best, rock album ever. I'm not arguing with anybody, though. It's just my opinion, and I can get a newspaper for $1.35 for that. You know, that's how important my opinion is. But for this show, that's what I'm talking about. So the next one, Rush's A Farewell to Kings. To me, this is the essential Rush progressive rock album to start out with. Yeah, we could go with Hemispheres or 2112, which are both progressive. Really any of the first, anything from Fly By Night right up through to Moving Pictures, and you wouldn't be at all wrong recommending any of those. This one is the most progressive, I think, of all of those albums. Maybe Hemispheres is more, but Hemispheres is a little bit harder to swallow, I think. This is much more accessible, I think, if you're starting out. But I flip-flop between either one of these two, but today I'm choosing this one for my essential collection. And then the last album is maybe the greatest prog rock album of all time. If you could only choose to own one progressive rock album, I think it would have to be this one. Close to the Edge, yes. Is there a better album? It's not my favorite album, but it's definitely my favorite progressive rock album. And I just think this is a fantastic album, and you're getting to see me twice now. That's not necessarily a good thing. Anyways, this is a fantastic album. Every track on here is so memorable. The 3 tracks on here are among my favorite, yes, like in my top. If you're doing a top 10 favorite Yes songs, these 3 are all on it. It's just such a good album. Every track is so memorable. So much progressive stuff on here. Some great guitar, bass, keyboards. John Anderson's vocals are fantastic. Yeah, definitely an album that every progressive rock beginner or person who's been in progressive rock should own. Most of the people who've been in progressive rock for any length will have all of these albums, and they may have others they think are more essential. I'm not arguing that point. I'm just saying these are the 10 I think. Yes, Close to the Edge. Rush, A Farewell to Kings. Pink Floyd, I almost said Deep Purple for some reason, I don't know why. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. Nectar's Tab in the Ocean. In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. Left Overture from Kansas. Thick as a Brick from Jethro Tull. Genesis's Foxtrot, I love that cover too. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the debut, or you could go with Tarkus too. You wouldn't be wrong in either way. And Camel's Moon, get over here. Yeah, there it is. Camel's Moon Madness, great album. Or, maybe you prefer a heavier side. If you do, Mirage is a good choice as well. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was fun to do. I will probably do a part 2 because most of these bands have a couple of albums that I think are essential. And those 10 were the first 10. So maybe I'll do a part 2 of 10 essential progressive rock albums. Include a few bands that weren't included here. And I know people are going to ask me, well, what about this band? Well, you can only choose 10. You can't choose 12. Otherwise, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be 10, would it? Yeah. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. We'll be back next Wednesday with another favorites. Take care. Bye.